From Sigma Woman, this is the Business for Aligned Women podcast. I'm your host, Clara McKay, your aligned business coach and advocate for all things showing up for your vision. This is a no BS space for brave-hearted women who are actually craving change. I'm dedicated to bringing women's visions into reality, equipping women with all they need to build an abundant future, and shutting down all of the ways that you keep yourself small. Here, we're all about a women-centered approach, non-negotiable value alignment, and making bank without compromising your well-being. Each week, you're already one step closer to your most aligned and abundant future. Today, we are intentionally pausing to see how you're feeling about your year and your year in business. At the end of last year, I asked my Instagram following to share with me some of their words that they wanted to be embodying in 2024. And because we're mid-year and the year feels like it's gone really quickly, and part of being intentional and conscious and self-aware is to give yourself and allow yourself the time to pause and review and reconnect with those desires and dreams. I wanted to really allow and hold the space for us to do that together today. So if you even hear that and it's like, oh crap, it feels triggering. Maybe you can't even remember what your word is. Maybe you feel so removed from this concept of intentionality that you feel triggered by me even bringing up this idea. I want to invite you to my Self-Aligned Woman workshop. This is the workshop that is kind of the foundation for all of the work that you would do with me if you wanted to come on as a client. I get all of my clients to do it. And what it is doing is breaking down your true, unique, highest values, really going on a treasure hunt to land on something that is incredibly exciting and incredibly specific and unique and individual to you, and actually getting you to start embodying that on a day-to-day basis, not just through the actions and the things that you do, but through your perspective and your mindset and the way that you approach things, the energy that you carry yourself with. There's a link to that in the show notes if that sounds interesting. And before we get into this, if you're like, I don't care about the self-alignment, I'm here just for my business. If you haven't already done it, or even if you did at the end of last year, I want to remind you that I have a free resource, which is a yearly review workbook. If you did it last year and you didn't make the changes, this is your reminder to make those changes. Maybe you need to go and download it again and do it again. It's been 6 months if you did it last year. If you are feeling lost in your business and you've never gone through that free week workbook and you want some direction on some strategy and some new, more intentional choices to make in your business, go and grab that free workbook today. I'm going to start with myself and then I'm going to talk about you guys. And I would really love to hear your thoughts and your feedback on your word of the year. Have you embodied it? Have you not? Has it changed? How are you feeling about it? Do you feel like the same person who came up with that word at the end of last year? And I hope to inspire you a little bit with my own experience with this, and also just expand for you, because I think we're very hard on ourselves. I know I am, and I think it actually takes pausing sometimes and looking at the evidence before we go, oh, I'm doing pretty well with this actually. My word of the year at the end of last year was elevated. And to be totally honest, I've been running through my year thinking that it's up level. And I think what happened at the end of last year was I was like, up level isn't a word. That's not a dictionary word, doesn't actually exist. But the word that I meant was elevated. Now, if you ask me that today, I might go, I don't really feel elevated. Like, it's the middle of winter. My get up when I go for a walk, I look like a marshmallow. I don't feel particularly put together. I don't feel particularly stylish today. Although maybe I'm better than last year, who knows? But when I look at the actions that have happened over the last 6 months, we can start to pull this apart. I'm going to talk about some things that I've elevated or up leveled. I completely elevated my brand. I finally, after all these years of wanting it, I have a brand with visual guidelines. It's really easy for me to make content. It's really easy for my VA to make content, and everything's cohesive and relatively looks nice across all platforms. And it just makes life so much easier. I think this is something that people don't understand, that like getting your brand done just will streamline anything else that you try to create, because you're just taking away all that creative conceptualizing part of it. And I am offering branding and art direction again. I used to do it. I stopped doing it in 2020 or 2019, and I am doing it again. So if that sparks anything in anyone, I'm not going to be like publicizing it too much. I'm just going to be sharing it because I just want to really work with a couple of people who are incredibly aligned. If that opens anything up for you, feel free to get in touch. The brand have them back in February, and to be honest, like this is actually a good pause because there are some things that I haven't implemented still from that rebrand, especially like things like bank accounts that have been sitting there that I haven't changed everything over. And I did the other day decide I'll do that in the new financial year, which is July 1. That's going to happen then, rather than continuing to kind of push things along and avoid things, actually giving myself a deadline for it. The brand happened. A big elevated up level is hiring my beautiful VA, Kathleen. She doesn't do too many hours for me, but she does enough, and I can see that we'll probably grow in our hours together. We've been working together for 6 months now, and we'll be continuing for at least 9. And there's so many more things that she could be doing, but the things that she are doing, it's just really taken a bit of excess pressure off of me, and it's meant that I'm not doing little admin kind of methodical little things that don't require my particular creative brain to be doing, but they're still happening. And having the VA has allowed me to be the most consistent for the longest amount of time in all of my content marketing. I think I post something like 17 pieces of content per day, 7 days a week across all platforms. And it's honestly not stressful. It's not a big deal because kind of this is all happening and we're working on it together as a system. And I know that we're only going to continue systematizing things. And that just means that I get to be visible to my ideal client in all of the places where they are. I'm being really consistent. I'm also showing to my potential clients that it's possible to be consistent and still feel very aligned and very nourished and very rested. And also things like hitting 50K on TikTok, for me, that's really important to be able to say to my clients that I can and I have done that, because there are a lot of business coaches out there who only have Instagram and have tried to grow podcast, Pinterest, TikTok, elsewhere and can't. And I think that proves that they're not necessarily business coaches, they're just Instagram coaches. And that's a really big difference between someone who can teach you how to market anywhere versus someone who understands Instagram, especially when Instagram is really not the best place to be growing in 2024. That's been a really major up level in terms of systems, and it's only going to continue getting elevated. Other things in my business that have up leveled, things like including integration weeks with my coaching cohorts. Previously, we would do 10 weeks back to back. I cannot even believe that I used to do that, or I used to get my clients to do that. Like, that is obscene. Not only do they need the integration week just to like process the information that they're learning, but they often also need the time to literally catch up on homework. And I think it's created a really different energy in the cohorts, and it's made, I think, people feel a bit more supported, and it's made it a bit more gentle and a bit more aligned. Absolutely love that. I am working my business to create more group coaching offerings, because mainly there's a lot of psychological studies around the accountability aspect of working in a group. and progress and moving forward, because sometimes people can kind of feel okay coming to their one coach and saying, I didn't do the homework this week. But when you have your contemporaries in the room with you, you're much less likely to do that, and you're going to really show up in your best possible way. That's another thing that I am up leveling. I feel like the podcast has really hit its stride. I don't know if we would call it up leveling, but we're really starting to make it a really high priority, and that's only going to continue benefiting. And it feels really nice to know that I'm not going to be taking any random breaks from the podcast, and the podcast just happens every single week, no matter what. And that feels really lovely. And also, that's kind of another reason why I stand out from other business coaches, because if you go and look at their podcast, maybe they've done 3, maybe they've done 8, maybe they've done 10, but they've not been weekly. And the ability to show up consistently is proving to you that it's possible, rather than kind of dipping in and out when I want to try and sell you something, which I think is what's going on in a lot of other places. Adjacent, letting go of business conversations, finances paid a huge sum to my superannuation, which is basically, for anyone who's overseas, it's like your retirement fund. And I know in my first couple of years of working for myself, I did not do that. Really getting committed to doing that, even though I have other financial goals that might have set back. It's like really looking forward into the future. Also, this is the first time that I've started an investment journey, not with much money, but a good enough chunk to get started and to continue with. And it feels good to even have started that process. And in terms of my lifestyle, this is where I feel the most proud, I think, in terms of my elevated. Getting up every day at 6 a.m. and getting on the Peloton bike and doing a strength class and a stretch class and maybe yoga, maybe Pilates, going to the gym like minimum 3 times a week when I can, making sure I do my self-care in the evening, and making sure I'm either meditating or doing yoga nidra in the afternoon, and sticking to my hypnosis and all of these. Like, it's not perfect, but if we looked over the last 6 months, I think it would be a lot more consistent than the 12 months prior to that. And like getting up early and working out every day was quite a pipe dream for me for a long time. And now it's just like part of my life. And one thing that I will say to expand anyone who's also working on that is my mood is just crazily better. My mood is so much better. My clarity, my ability to focus, my positivity is just completely different. And we do know that about exercise. That's one thing that I feel really proud of, that lifestyle component. I also think over the last 2 years since moving out of the city, I spent a lot of time second guessing and questioning myself around how much solitude I have, and how much I just love being with my dogs and reading books, and like a Saturday night in reading, doing a readathon, or like watching horror movies from the 90s was like, I would sometimes second guess myself and be like, oh, you're a bit of a loser. Like, I do have friends, but a lot of my friends don't live in Australia, don't live in my state. I would kind of be a bit hard on myself around that. And I really feel like that's something that I've just completely settled into. And I'm just like, no fucking way, piss off. I know myself. I love myself. I like myself. I like my company better than anyone else's, apart from my dogs, unfortunately. And I'm like really kind of okay with that. I'm proud of that. That's also something that I've up leveled, which might sound funny to some people, but I feel like for a lot of people, that's going to resonate. Definitely, I feel like I've up leveled in terms of I'm not feeling as overwhelmed anymore. I think after it's been about 3 years of me consistently planning to a 12-month plan and relatively sticking to it. And that has allowed me to really slow everything down and really not feel overwhelmed or as stressed as I have in previous years. And just to kind of expand again, I'm still making more money now, approaching things in a much slower, calmer, less intense, less overwhelmed way than I was when I was really kind of stressing myself and feeling very overwhelmed all the time. Last little thing I want to say about this is I think pausing and tuning into this word of the year is just a really good opportunity to notice where things don't feel good and where they require a little bit more of your attention, or in my case, a little bit more elevation. I know that for me in human design, being a generator, that's really important to not just be pushing through things that feel really bad. But I do think it's not good for any of us to be doing things that we feel really, really awful. Giving you that opportunity to pause and go, hang on, is there something here that it just doesn't feel right? And can I give it the time to clean it up or sort it out or delegate it or get rid of it? Let's move into your words of the year. I just had a couple that I grabbed from what you guys shared with me, but they're all really lovely. And I'll just read them out. Presence, connection, secure, sparkle, action, courage, self-expression, expansion, embodiment, rest, conviction, leadership, taking up space, and ownership. And I love with the words that I did grab that there's quite a balance of like active and non-active, more processing kind of themes. But there are a lot of words there that are about going out and doing something. And maybe for this person who's written rest, maybe rest is the thing that they don't do enough of. Using this moment and this pause, I just want to remind you of something. And I like to work very intuitively in my business. I get a lot of intuitive hits and a lot of intuitive pings. And one thing that I'm trying to change is sharing them a little bit more and kind of stepping out of that woo-woo closet a little bit more, especially in terms of those channeled messages that I get, because I have shared them with my clients for 4 years and I've never once got it wrong. It's always been obscure and on the point. I'm going to start sharing them with other people more. And I wanted to remind all of you that when you're conceptualizing, overthinking, or just spending a lot of time in the thinking, the breaking down, the working it out in your head, the kind of like brainstorming, visualizing parts, the longer time you spend in that, the harder it is to move into those acting based doing behaviors, even if the doing is forcing yourself to rest when it's not regular or like natural for you to do that. And I just want to remind you that really often, like I swear, this isn't about bypass. It's not bypass. But often moving into taking some action is actually the balm for the overthinking. And I've seen it recently with clients that if you stay too long in the conceptual space, you spend too long not realizing kind of where your skill set is. And it often takes moving into action to know what your skill set is, what you're good at, and what you might need other people to help you with. But if you're staying in that conceptualizing base, like you're always going to be 10 steps behind. Even if the action is small, even if the action is having a nap, the action rather than the thinking about the thing is generally going to be the balm to your worries. I would love to know if any of this hit. I would love to know where you're at with your word. Please send me a DM, send me an email. I'd love to chat about it. If you can't tell, getting to share this time with you is something that I find truly sacred. I know that you're busy, but if you've taken anything away from our time spent together today, could you extend the love and share this episode with a friend, your community, or on your socials? Tag me so that I can see it and I can share it too. Or when you have a spare moment, leave the podcast a review. These things cost you nothing and will mean so much to me. Let's get this resource into the hands of more women visionaries and help us collectively move towards our most aligned way of being and doing business together.